Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is NBL Overtime, all thanks to LD Mobile, and we are stacked. What a week it has been. The new coach of the Hawks, Brian Goorjian, going to join us in a matter of moments. The head coach of the Sydney Kings, Will Weaver, joining us as well. There's signings, there's reported signings. It is all going on. Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. I'm excited. I'm assuming Homicide. You talk about this not being a cupcake league. It's gone to a new level.
It has gone to a level I don't think we've seen ever, right? We're talking about the Kings, Perth, United. You know they're going to be there at the end. Cairns with an incredible season they had last year. New Zealand stacking back up. Now the Hawks bring back the GOAT. You know right there, just with him coaching, the championship contenders without knowing how he's going to put this thing together. You know Brian Goorjian will have this team in the finals.
You have come
There's
in.
no way. There's no way. It's Goorjian.
I'm not going to argue against it. I just didn't expect it this quickly.
No. I mean, man.
Hey, I hear you. I mean, how's the respect that
Hello, Liam.
the instant credibility that exists with this guy, where they don't have a single player on the roster, they don't have a single player contracted. They're just coming them out of voluntary administration, brand new ownership, but by landing this guy, Hall of Fame coach, man who has won more championships than any other coach in NBL history, more games than any other coach, very, very, very highly respected, that you just instantly give them that level of credibility to say that they are championship contenders. Now, who knows? I mean, I prefer to sit back and watch to see what kind of roster they put together, but the man made 19 finals appearances in a row.
Come on, man.
And literally, Cam, I want to throw this out there. I mean, I actually think there is no person on the planet
I could turn this thing around.
that they could have hired as their head coach that would serve as a better hiring. He just ticks so many boxes. I mentioned the instant credibility. I mean, it's instant respect, publicity, cachet in the free agent market, knowledge of the league. I mean, he's been out of the league for 10 years, but we know he has watched it closely. I mean, literally, I'm talking Greg Popovich, Doc Rivers. I don't care. This is the top guy on the planet that they could have signed, and they got it done. Kudos to Dory and Brian and Michael and the crew there that have got this done.
You know, we have a situation where free agency got pushed back in this weird 2020 year, and we're trying to work our way through that. The date is approaching, and there would be teams around the NBL, and we've discussed it. You know, well, Sunday Deck, it might be Emmett, you know, these players, you know, Todd Blanchfield, who might have been having a little chat or maybe thinking elsewhere is where my career is going to be held. And then all of a sudden, you get the news that Brian Goorjian is a new coach of the team we played for last year, a new ownership group, a whole new start, some real positivity, and your mind is just blown. So you go from maybe having a chat to someone, and I'm well on the corner. If you're an NBL club and you see talent or you see someone who on that Illawarra team last year, you want to maybe try and fit into your squad for 21, those conversations may have just been blown out of the water by this announcement in the last 24 hours. I'm not definitely saying that those players are definitely going back or that even Goorjian wants them, although you think with some of the talent they had, he would be pretty keen to get them back. But everything just gets thrown up because Brian Goorjian, as you touched on, Liam, Santamaria, just is back in the league, and it's exciting for everybody. If you're a Hawks fan or not, I think it's a great thing going forward, no doubt.
No, you're 100% correct. And I mean, if you're, like you said, if you're Angus Glover, you're Sunday Deck, you're Sam Froling, in particular, those three guys.
Yeah.
And you're listening, and throw Emmett Nah perhaps into that mix as well.
I think so.
And those guys have all been saying, look, I want to wait and see how this plays out. They had been offered the opportunity to re-sign already, but they were holding out. So look, I need to see what the ownership group looks like, what the who the coach is going to be. And then you see Brian Goorjian announced. You hear him say, hey, I love developing talent. That's how I got started. That's how I built my name. And I developed guys like Jason Smith and Chris Anstey and Frank Dremick. And the list just goes on and on and on with these guys that he's had a role in building into outstanding pros. And you go 100%. You go, okay, wow, all right, let's sit down and talk. Let's get onto the blower and work this out. And There are going to be, there are interest from other places, but it's an absolute game changer. Sam Froling, Angus Glover, Sunday Deck. Do yourselves a favor. Re-sign and play for this guy. He's going to bring in good imports to work with you, and he is going to make you a better player and take your game to the next level. And that, after all, when you're at that stage in your career, is what it's all about.
100%.
So just so we clarify, Sunday Deck, don't take the bag, stay at the Hawks, and yes. I knew you'd come around, Homicide.
When you get a coach like this, you get an opportunity to play for a coach like this. This is the GOAT. Doesn't get any better. Where are you going? So they need to stay where they're at.
Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. Will Weaver's going to join us later in this show. A little bit of news kicking around. It is all going on. But the man of the moment, Brian Goorjian, a little earlier in the day, called up with Liam Santamaria.
Now we got to go. We got to go with the double and the rotate. All right. In the backcourt and play the lane. All right. So Darren.
In catching, screening, and cutting, you've worked on that harder than anybody. All right, Nick, they're yours. Let's have a hands in. Real tight tonight, fellas. 1, 2, 3. Kids. You've got Feasta now, and you've got Ronaldson. You've got Harvey. You've got Ben Thompson. You've got Ricky. We're switching on balls all the way around now. We can.
Brian Goorjian and Matt Nielsen embrace an very emotional circumstances. Who would have believed it? They trail by as many as 17 in the third and final period. It was 34-17 in the final term.
Well, he's back 11 years after hoisting the championship trophy with the South Dragons. The most successful coach in NBL history, Brian Goorjian, announced this morning as the new head coach of the Hawks as they move into a new era under new ownership. And I'm pleased to say the great man joins me now from his home in Melbourne. Gorge, good to see you, mate.
Nice to see you again, Lim. It's been a long time, but yeah, nice to see you, man.
Congrats. How are you feeling about being back in the league?
No, I'm really excited. I got an opportunity, obviously, with the virus that's going on right now and been worldwide. The Chinese league closed down early, and I got back, and I've spent more time in Australia than I have in the last 11 years, and had a nice opportunity to watch the final series and some of the last games of the regular season in Australia as opposed to from afar. So I'm, really enjoyed the league, what's gone on in the league, and I'm excited about this opportunity.
What are your feelings about joining this organization in particular? This is a club that you battled against as a bit of a local rivalry during your time with the Kings. How are you feeling about joining the Hawks and this foundation club?
But I mean, it's the two major issues for me was one, after all my, years in the NBL, one of the constants the last 10 years were the strength of the club in the league. And over the last 11 years since I left, what Larry Kesselman has done for the NBL and the state of the league now from what I left is honestly truly amazing. And to, go to the Vegas Summer League, do all those things that you do in China, Japan, Korea, the Philippines. Everybody knows about the NBL. Everybody knows what's going on with our national team, which, all of these countries play. And you've got 25 million people, and the way we're performing is, again, very special. And then all the development with all these kids from Australia going and playing in America. So there's a big focus now on Australian basketball, and the key and the most important one is our NBL league. And Larry's done a tremendous job there. So that was one. And then the second that kind of falls in the same category is the ownerships. And, I go back to probably the hardest time I ever had in basketball, coach or player, was my last year with the Sydney Kings. And Firepower came in and bought the Kings, which led eventually to the Kings folding. And that last year, to get through that season, and I won't go on about, but what the players went through and what the staff went through, there was an owner, Dory, who got me through that. Just kept my spirits up, kept me focused. I had him under my wing with the guys, making in him his leadership, and he's obviously a top young businessman, was special. And we ended up, getting through that season. And when I went back to Melbourne, Dory grabbed me and said, someday I'm gonna have my franchise and you're gonna be my coach. And from the time that I got back and I was watching, what's going on in Australia, we had constant conversation and the possibility that he may, be involved in this special situation with the Hawks. And so there was tremendous communication over a 3-4 month period. And I became more and more excited by the prospect. And then, we started Zooming the other potential owners, which was, Brian Colangelo and Michael Proctor, and talking about the direction of what they wanted to do with the franchise, what was important to them, how they were going to build a team. And a guy like Brian Colangelo that's got NBA experience, is a basketball guy. It hit home. And I said, this is, it covers the bases. And then, over the years, going to Wollongong and competing there, it's always been a team, in my time here, that punched above its weight, that played real hard, that had tremendous chemistry. And you'd go in there and you'd see a lot of the same people that supported the team. It looked, whenever you went in there, you go, God, man, this place is beautiful. It's right on the water. This is a hidden nugget in that stadium, sitting right there on the coastline. And, talking to Glenn Saville, who, was a part of the Kings the last year, part of my national team, Matty Campbell, both icons with the old, Wollongong Hawks that, I had to do with the national team and my club team, always spoke highly about the Gong. And then, as the national coach, I worked as an assistant was Brendan Joyce and Gordy McLeod, who both were head coaches and did a tremendous job with those teams. And all they talk about is what a great place it is. And even today, working some guys out today with the national program, Kyle Abney came by and just tapped me and said, man, you're going to love Wollongong. It is a special, special, special place. I guess he spent time there. So again, there's that side of things really excites me. A beautiful place to live, a great ownership, what Larry Kesselman's done with the league. And then maybe the last thing, whether it be a strength or a weakness, but I look at it as a strength, is that we have a clean, it's empty, it's blank. You're starting from scratch. And I'm looking at that, and I know the organization and ownership is looking at that as a positive.
What do you like about that? Blank canvas, nobody signed to the roster. You've got those 3 young guys in Angus Glover, Sunday Deck, and Sam Froling that are kind of floating out there with their contracts null and void from the voluntary administration process. What do you like about the blank canvas, and what do you feel like are the steps forward from here in terms of the roster?
Well, in my time in coaching, one of the things I learned very early, with the Magic, going back to the Magic days and playing against the Tigers, I'm not for everybody, and I don't think Lindsey Gaze was for everybody. You don't have to, everybody doesn't have to like you. All the players don't have to want to play for you. If you are, I don't know that you're for real. Mm-hmm. And you have a certain style and a certain way you want to play and a certain personality. And I want to be me. And I'm not right for everybody. So what I'm walking into, there's no one sitting there that I walk in there and go, man, I got to deal with this guy for 3 years. So that guy's sitting there looking at me and saying, hey, man, I don't want, this guy's not my cup of tea. And I'm labored with this for 2 more years on my contract. Again, I think that's a positive. I can, go, and there seems to be, with the world in the state that it's in, a lot of these rosters are filled up, and you got all these, what's going on in America right now? What's going on in Europe right now? You have 400 kids playing over there. Is the NCAA going to resume? What is going to happen? There's a lot of balls, swirling around, and there's still a lot of opportunity. So, I'm excited about the opportunity to start with people that want to play for, me and my staff and our organization and our style of play, and guys that I want to coach.
You talked there a bit about your style of play. The Hawks as an organization, man, you probably remember, you once famously spoke about them as being the guys with the tattoos. They're missing their front teeth. They got their moccasins on, and they want to come in here and kick our ass. Your teams have always been that hard hat style of play. I mean, do you feel like that's a good fit? And are you going to implement the same type of style on the floor as we've seen from you previously in the NBL?
I don't think so. I mean, one of the things with, if you go through my history, one of the things that, if you wanted to go down a negative path with me, sometimes I was criticized that, too much ball movement, too much ball control, too much physicality on the defense. And it bordered a little bit on boring for some people. But you're playing a game by rules. And, I got into a box, and I figured out the NBL after playing here and coaching here a number of years. Here's a formula that wins. And now going overseas and, playing in Asia and coaching around the world, much more, and they changed the game. The game has changed with the 3-point. All of these things are new. And if you said to me, well, what are 2 things? I'm hoping to put in, an offense that would focus more on the first 6 seconds of the shot and more concept on a ball swing where you're into something right now. And and especially with the 40-minute shot clock, the 40-minute game clock, and the depth of talent now that you've got in these teams. I went to United's practice leading into the playoffs, and the 2 New Zealand players were playing with New Zealand, and Barlow was out with a calf. And I'm looking and going, these guys are 15 guys deep, and they're missing 3 of their best players. So as a coach, you're looking and you say, man, I got to go 8, 9 deep in this. I'm going to have to play a certain style. So for me, I'm hoping that I can open the game up more than I have in the past. And I'd say second aspect of me that's different is, as a coach, more flow as well. I tend, and you can tell during this interview, I can get going and I can get yapping. And one of the things that I've done the last 11 years is I've worked through an interpreter. And when you're working through an interpreter, a lot of things go on the court and you go, do it now. I'll bite my tongue on this one.
Right.
Or, okay, if we're going to talk, let's keep these short phrases, driving lane, passing lane, as opposed to the explanation. And when I've come back and done some clinics, one of the comments on the positive side, and I'm sure there's some negatives as well, but on the positive, my practices, my actions, more flow. More flow. And when I say that word, I mean, it's a common word now in the game in Australia, but I'm hoping that applies to the style of play that we play offensively. More rotation of players, more flow. And the defense, I'm hoping it's as nasty as I got those guys to play back in the 90s and the early 2000s. I still believe that's the key to being successful and playing that, within the rules. And the rules have changed a lot for the offensive player, but a real emphasis, I know, in most of the places I've been, whether it's the Chinese national team, whether it's China, the Philippines, Japan, it's those teams over there as well that play the other side of the ball, and a lot of them don't. But the ones that do win.
You're one of your first chances to talk about the role and stepping into it. You spoke about developing talent, talked about the guys over the course of your history, and especially in the early days who were young, up-and-coming talents in Australia who you helped develop. What are your impressions of the young talent that currently exists in the NBL?
The strength of it, and it's amazing to me. I think if I had a son and I looked at United and I go, man, you have to be a really good player to be, I look at, Jack Purchase, who's Nigel's son, who I played with. I coached Wayne McDaniel, his son. They're tremendous basketball players, Division I starters. Some of them, leading scorers on their team. They're not getting a sniff. At this stage, they've got to go through process. So you're looking at this and you're going, man, this league is deep, and there is a lot of young talent in it. And I think with our organization and watching the Hawks last year, it's the first time that, and you look at Wollongong's history, how much and how many times they've had to punch outside of their weight. And it's like, always fighting Goliath. And this is the first year that they finished last in their club's history. And I looked at it and you could see, reasons for that. They lost their import, who was a dominant player in China. Tremendous. If you, Aaron Brooks is Bryce Cotton-like. Bryce played in China as well. And Aaron was an icon. Everybody knows Aaron Brooks. He was tremendous. And I thought he was just starting, and you could see it. If he would have stayed with the Hawks and been healthy, I think it would have been a different beast. And then the second aspect of the was the ball scenario. And there's no doubt it was a tremendous situation for the NBL, for the league, and for Wollongong franchise-wise. It also tremendous talent. But from a coaching standpoint and the team standpoint, you've got a very young man, and he needs to be serviced. And the ball's in his hand a lot. And is he going to play this season? And all three of those, for whatever reason, didn't happen. And that really slugged that team in the guts. But you go through the back half of the year, and what shines through to me for the future is the Frawlings, Nar, Sonny Dench. There's 3 or 4 guys there. You go, wow, these kids have some talent and they're young. And I look back to McKinnon and Anstey and Drimmick and, Jason Smith. That's my job. With these young kids, I mean, one of my major situations is starting as the coach of the Hawks. One is to sign them and get them. We want that group back. And 2 is the commitment and a staff that are going to develop these kids. And 1, I know from doing it in the past, it's a grind. It's hard work. And number 2 in it, there's got to be a part of this of development. They have to play. So, next year, I'm hoping, it starts with my job right now is the competence in getting the right staff, and I'm close. My thing will be thin. My staff will be thin. I'll go with guys that I can trust, that I've worked with for a number of years, and start there and learn the state of but I've got guys that have got my back, and I got guys that I know are competent. And then on the basketball side, right now, number 1 is re-signing those major pieces, those major young pieces, and they've been free. Everybody's been, I'm sure, but it's just the nature of the beast, plucking away at those guys. So I've got some work to do to sell this new franchise to them and get them back.
Last question, mate, before I let you go. I know you've got to move on, a bunch of media to do today. part of that process of selling is to those players, but it's also to that passionate fan base. Hasn't been a massive fan base over the years, but those Hawkheads that do support that club, love that club. And as you could imagine, there's some mixed emotions for them right now. Excitement, new ownership, ecstatic about signing you as the head coach. But a lot of them are feeling a little, the pinch a little about the name change, dropping Illawarra and just going by the Hawks. What would be your message to those supporters of the club that have been with them through thick and thin over the years?
One is, I can't fix that, but in all honesty, I've experienced it. I mean, come on. I mean, this is, I talked originally about what's happened in the league and the transformation with Larry Kesselman. And I'm not a businessman, but I know this. When I was coaching the Magic and I worked my ass off on that brand, and I love that brand, it broke my heart when the Magic merged to take up more area of Victoria for more support. And my original playing group, in coming to Australia, I was brought over by Lindsay Gaze, and I played with Andrew Gaze, and they're two icons, and they've worked their whole lives for that brand, the Melbourne Tigers. The Melbourne Tigers are now Melbourne United. Now, the decisions that have been made for the betterment of these franchises so they can be financial and exist. And that emotion, I know personally, and I say to our fans, we're going to come into that stadium, into Wollongong, and we are going to play a standard of basketball and with a passion and with an energy and win. And I think that will be it's with all of this that goes around it, the big thing is going to be when the team steps on the floor. Do they represent what Wollongong is about as an area? And I think we will. But the name, the Hawks, and the dropping of Illawarra is a very difficult situation, and I'm sure a lot of thought was put into that. But again, I'm not a business person, but I've gone through it before, and United's doing just fine. And I think that people will settle down if we get this right group together and we play with as a team and play with a passion that they're proud of. I think they'll get behind the team.
I agree. And one thing we know for sure, that there's nothing you can do better for a basketball brand in Australia than to attach the Goergen name to it as the head coach, and also to win. So when the team starts doing both of those things, it's going to be full steam ahead for that organization. Mate, stoked to have you back in the league, patrolling those NBL sidelines. Thanks heaps for jumping on, and good luck.
Thanks, Lim. Really excited. Thanks, mate.
Young Victoria Titans player Liam Santamaria is a man embarking on a steep learning curve. He's learning the trade of basketball from some of the best teachers in the game. For a player like Liam, this process involves plenty of time on the bench, but it's a process that he's prepared to go through.
I know a lot of people say a lot of positive things about Brian, but he really is a great coach, and he's especially good as a teacher of the game.
So here's a theory on the side. Liam Santamaria, 1 year in the NBL under Brian Goorjian. Now, of course, Liam continuing to show some influence around the league. I'm not sure this is just a coincidence or that Liam's put his foot down and said, it's time for the GOAT to get back. Great chat for more of it. And that's, of course, so much more of it. Check it out on all the NBL socials as well over the next couple of days of Liam Santamaria and his former coach, Brian Goorjian, having a chat. But that's my theory. So, Liam, thank you from all of us for getting
I had nothing to do with it. But I will say, for the last 10 years, every single coaching vacancy in the NBL, Goorj has been linked to. Now, nothing from his doing, but because he's been the A1 target every single time. Anyone who has been doing their due diligence has given him or his wife Amanda a call and just touch base. I know Southeast Melbourne Phoenix had a sit down and a talk about it. We know every Melbourne United, Sydney Kings, and now the Hawkheads have him as their coach.
Ooh, all right. Hey, a little more news. We get to Will Weaver very shortly. A little more news kicking around. Reported in the last couple of days, big Isaac Humphries going to end up at the Adelaide 36ers, of course, making some waves. What are you hearing here, Liam?
That's the report. 2-year deal from the Adelaide 36ers from ESPN's Olgun Ulick. We wait to hear official word from the 36ers, but that is certainly the report from him and the hot word bubbling around the NBL kind of recruiting circles. We know former Rookie of the Year in the league. Since then, a few years away, 2 years in the G League, 5 NBA games with the Atlanta Hawks. Kid's still only 22.
Young.
People forget about how young he was when he was first here. And that's a big get for the 36ers. They're putting together an imposing front line of talent. We know they still have Daniel Johnson as a re-signing, one of the best players in the league. And I've talked about their interest and their linking with New Zealand Jack Salt as well. So they are getting things done. And I think my understanding
here we go
is that Isaac Humphries is going to come back into the league as the highest paid Australian in the competition.
Oh, geez. And I'll tell you this, homicide. Josh Giddey, of course, next star, who they got the signature of a couple of months ago. And we have spoken about the fact that when you have eyeballs on you or on a particular player on your team, it can help your future be enhanced if it comes to the NBA. And that's something I think Isaac Humphries right now be thinking, hey, Josh Giddey is going to have a great deal of people extremely interested in him, already happening from a NBA perspective. If I go in on big cash, as just been reported or suggested, 22-year-old, big money. Everyone watching Josh Giddey, I can show what I do, fit the team beautifully. Boom. NBA out clause, no doubt, I assume would be in that contract.
I mean, the biggest thing for a young talent like Josh Giddey is to have big men who you can give the ball to and they can help bail you out in tough times. He can really help you win games down the stretch. And you now have that. Man, this is a blessing for Josh Giddey to have DJ. We know what DJ is going to bring. And they gave him a bag. He loves Adelaide, right? Now to have the singer?
The singer, yes.
The singer on your team?
The singer.
You know what I'm saying? Let's not forget he's super talented, but for him to be that young, talented, he's coming in hungry.
Yep.
He was the Rookie of the Year a couple of years ago in this league. Played in the G League, got now some experience. He played in FMP, didn't he? Didn't he go to Serbia a bit, right? And then he was in the league for a bit as well. So, he's got some experience under his belt, and he's definitely coming home to prove his worth and value. So, great signing to have him back in the league, and I look forward to seeing him ball out.
Hey, as we all know, when a name gets just unexpectedly, randomly thrown up by Liam Santamaria, well, I should have known, but, there's something cooking behind the scenes because he just threw Cam Gliddon out of nowhere last week. Turns out a day later, a mutual separation between the Bullets and Cam Gliddon. He's now been, of course, linked via reports to Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Liam, what can you tell us?
Well, we thought that he would serve well as a bit of a change of scenery guy this time last week, and he clearly felt the same way. Certainly at his instigation, there's been some sort of questioning about which way that's come from. That's certainly come from him. And there have been reports linking him to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Like I said last week, I think that would be a really good landing place. Now, they are moving on from Ben Madgen, declined their part of the mutual option that they had on him. And we know Cam Gliddon is a classy operator and a much, much better player than what he showed last year. Now, the big question for me, whether it's Southeast Melbourne Phoenix or somewhere else, does he come in with that chip on his shoulder? Does he come in with a point to prove? Is he at that point in his career where he's still hungry and wants to show everyone, hey, what happened last season was BS? Because I'm an all NBL kind of level operator, which is where his career was headed previously. And I think he certainly has the potential to return to that kind of level of production.
I agree with you. I think that, the change of scenery was perfect. Fresh start. You can kind of forget about last season, but definitely come in super aggressive with a chip on your shoulder. You fit the mold to a T. what a prototypical two guard should look like for the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. You know they love shooting threes, and you're going to have the green light. So you have the experience, you got the game to back it up. One bad season, you know, you should be able to shrug that off and come in aggressive.
Let it fly. All right, we're going to get to a little...
Can I just flag one more thing about Cam Gliddon?
Yes.
Wherever he goes, here's what I hope the coach does. Give him a 10-shot minimum rule. Like, Cam, I'm going to be up your ass. If the game ends, I look at the box score and you did not get 10 shots up. That's when he has been at his best in this league. Can slip into, you think about a guy like Todd Blanchfield as well, can slip into a mode of being a little wait and see, a little too team first. But that guy needs to be aggressive and get shots up. I think back to the 2016 preseason in Brisbane, where their imports point guard was injured, and Cam Gliddon was handling the rock, and Aaron Fern said, "Mate, you have to get shots up, 10-shot minimum, get them up, and we can go from there." It was the MVP of that preseason because that just kind of helps to get the best out of him. I want, if it is Southeast Melbourne, Mitch Creek, Simon Mitchell, Ty Wesley, everybody needs to encourage him to get a whole bunch of shots up and be super aggressive.
Agreed. All right, we'll get to a little more Phoenix signing news in a moment, but firstly, our man, Sydney Kings head coach Will Weaver about to join us.
What did you make of the second half and the way the guys battled in that fourth quarter there?
I had a beer out back. I have no idea. No, I watched a bit.
This is their second game of the weekend. Look to push it or just play your game?
Yes.
How bad you want to put a stamp on?
I mean, right now I think our focus is just Melbourne. Beating them, handling business at home court, and as long as we keep that mindset and keep whatever's coming next, that'll take care of itself.
I want to kiss you on the lips. How good is that? Come on. Cheers. See you guys.
Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. And boys, we are joined by, of course, I thought we were being joined by Will Weaver, who, of course, and everyone's taken, the pandemic and the weird world we're in at different times. And have a look at you. Will Weaver, head coach of the Sydney Kings, I think. Hey, man, what's up?
Not much, man. Just trying to make it out here, living this beach life. You guys are in cloudy, rainy Melbourne. Guys up here in Sydney are just loving the sunshine.
So is that's the excuse? Of course, the beard looks great, but that's what's happening. You're outside enjoying the sunshine, too busy as the restrictions get lifted to be able to have a shave. Is that where
that UV protection, man? That damn ozone layer is serious up here. You got to take care of the moneymaker. It's been nice to not have a reason to shave twice a week for a little while, and good to just spend more time with the family. And now I'm afraid if I shave it off, my son might not recognize me. I got a 20-month-old, so we'll have to cope with that once the next year comes around.
Mate, don't worry about that. Mate, as long as you win games, and of course you did such a great job of it last year, you can look however you want. Of course, cardigans and sweaters, which you looked so great in last year. And of course, just following my lead, and I just add that, Sean Dennis used to do it when he was a great coach in the NBL. I like it. I think it should stay.
I appreciate it. It's not clear who started the sweater fad first, me or you, but if you show up in a month looking, with your little goatee monster, you'll know who's following who.
I'll tell you what, if I hit puberty, you can grow a beard like that, I'll be really happy. But thank you for joining us. It's such a weird time, no doubt. So much going on, and you mentioned it. But how hard has it been? It's a generic question, but how hard is it to try and put together a professional sporting team while worrying about so much going on in the world and all the rest of it? How have you found it?
It hasn't been hard at all, to be honest. The chance to live in this country with the health status that we enjoy here, the chance really to reflect on how fortunate I am on so many levels. Living in Australia, coaching in the NBL, working with the people I work with, really highlighted, obviously, in the last 6 weeks or so with the death of George Floyd, and the opportunity really that's given all of us to reflect on the ways that our positions in society oftentimes dictate our outcomes. And so this has been an off season for me that's been really focused on trying to learn as much as I can and reflect on the gratitude I have for being where I am and having my family here with me and getting to spend a lot of time with them, while at the same time trying to open my eyes to the reality of life for many of my friends, many of the people I've worked with and work with still. And although I don't live in the United States anymore, where, obviously that incident happened, learning about where I do live and the history of what exists here societally and the plight of Indigenous people, as well as, members of society that happen to have black skin, no matter what their ethnic background, has been something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and talking about with our team.
Well, thanks heaps for joining us. Great to have you on. Talking about reflecting, using this time to reflect a little bit. No doubt that has also involved basketball and last season with the Kings. I guess I've got a two-part question for you. When you think back on last season, what are you most proud of in terms of what the organization achieved? And then secondly, not a regret so much, but if you could do it over, what would you do differently to what you did last season?
I think the answer to the first one is clear, which is the chance that I've had to listen to our players after our season concluded and talk to some of our fans and some of the folks that work here in Sydney. We feel like the foundation has been set. We feel like the proudest moment, honestly, of our sort of exit interview process was, a day after we withdrew from the finals, hearing Daniel Kickert say that was the most enjoyable year of basketball he's ever participated in. And that will stay with me for a very long time, because obviously his career and where he's been and the levels he's played at suggests that we're on the right track. And that's where all my focus went throughout the year, was trying to do things sustainably and build, really bring the right people in to build what our mandate was, which from Paul Smith and Paul Kine was to create something special that would last. And we've obviously seen, this offseason, how hard that is to do in this league, but really any league. The chance to build something lasting continues to be where my focus is. And so I think the reflection that I've done about our team, where I wish that I could have done more, is focused on that big picture stuff. So the tactics and the scouting reports and anything that is necessary to do our job and to deliver a product to our players that makes them feel prepared, necessarily takes away from some of the dreaming and some of the vision work that you do about thinking about where this thing is headed in the next year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And so I've enjoyed the chance to reflect with some coaches from different codes, fellow national team coaches, as well as from a variety of football codes, to improve my ability to keep my eye on the big picture moving forward and move into this year with an appreciation for some of the foundational elements we created, but a real excitement about how this place can become something special with a capital S.
Greg Muller got injured pretty much first half of the season. He was a big piece to what you guys were doing. Sean Bruce, talk about how great it is to have him back on your team and the impact that he had, especially the route it took for him to get in a position and how he capitalized on that position. Because we all know a lot of players get opportunities and fail to capitalize. But the route that it took for him to get to you guys and to capitalize, like how good was that for you to see and to have him back on your team for the next 2 years?
Yeah, in lots of ways we were uncharted waters. We're unproven. Myself, my staff, except for Adam Ford, probably, who'd been in this league for a long time, and Luke Longley and Alex Merritt, their reputations speak for themselves. But for me, I came here wanting to show what I'm about, and what I'm about is getting out of the way of good players and trying to create an environment where they can improve, and to whatever extent trying to avoid making it about me or about any member of our staff. This is a players program. And so the key is picking the right players, right? That's the most important thing we do. And when I spoke to Sean last year and spoke to Craig last year, those are, I think, an interesting comparison you've made, because I put them in the same bucket, which is they're hungry, they're smart, They have big dreams. They are nowhere near satisfied with anything that they've achieved. And they're looking for a platform. They're looking for people who are going to pour themselves into their craft, and they want to be around people that make them better. And so in both those cases, you know, we were quite candid with Craig and Sean that this is going to be a good team. This is going to be a team with players that are going to push you to compete for minutes. And you need to get your mind right about coming in to play a role on a good team, which is very different from putting up numbers on a team that's not going anywhere. And both those guys jumped at the chance. And I think as much as, you know, any of our starters last year rightfully will be remembered for the role they played in helping us have a really good season, to me, those are easy roles to play. It's easy to be a really good player and go out there and know exactly that you're going to start the game and you're going to play a bunch of minutes. It's very difficult to sit on the bench and be ready and keep your craft tight and ride the waves of injuries and how that changes your role. And we had plenty of that last year, and that's pro sport. And so I couldn't be prouder to think of those guys as my teammates. And I'm really excited for our fans to get to continue to cheer for them.
Not exactly where I thought you were going to go, Homicide, considering you've suggested the Sydney Kings should blow it all up. And we start again. Will, I know you watched the show. What do you think? You're going to take Homicide's advice?
Well, it depends on how expensive he is, I guess. You know, I'm willing to take whatever advice we can get, depending on how much it costs. But my understanding is his rate is going up. So I don't know that we're competing in that. That's the right ballpark for us to be playing in these days.
Hey, let's just go back. Casper Ware, of course, the opt-in, opt-out situation. And when it came down to, of course, a tough personal decision, no doubt, for Casper Ware. But how much communication was there? I asked Simon Mitchell similar around Mitch Creek last week. Was there a continual conversation, or did you leave it to Casper to make the decision for himself and his family? Or when we got to that deadline, how much were you involved, or how much were the Sydney Kings involved in a communication process?
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong to think this way, but I like working at a place where there's lots of communication and everyone knows where they stand at all times, and that we recognize that there's a business component to professional sports that you can't forget about, but that you love the few moments that when you're together competing alongside each other that you can forget for just a few minutes, you know, at a time. And I think this place, our organization, is as close to feeling like, you know, all of the cliches that you have about how these guys looked at each other last year, that was real. Like, there were real relationships that they formed as competitors, as teammates. And I think largely that's why you saw the kind of decision get made that you did in terms of us pulling out of the grand final, was because they really did care for each other. And you had guys that knew it was their last game ever playing and voting to try to, you know, inside of a conversation to wrap it up, because they cared about getting Casper back to his family in LA, who were looking around, you know, remembering the riots that have plagued that city in past years, and looking at the president of the United States and, you know, making the judgment, I think rightly, that he's a bit of a loose cannon and that they could be separated from their families for a long time. So the conversations with Casper, the conversations with Xavier, you know, all our players, we stay in too good touch. We like talking to each other. We like talking about basketball. You know, Casper wished me Happy Father's Day yesterday. I don't know how many players that, you know, currently not on the roster are really thinking about their old, ugly, bearded, fogey coach's family across the Pacific Ocean. But he's one of them, and that's a big part of the reason why we enjoyed having him with us last year, and he's going to have a lot of success wherever it is moving forward.
Speaking of maintaining communication, Will, what's the latest update with regards to Bogues? Do you remain hopeful that he'll play with you guys next season?
Well, I think maybe the biggest impediment to that is the likelihood that either he or I gets hurt in our surfing passions, which has been ignited during this offseason. So he's got his stand-up board game, I think, pretty tight from what I understand up there in the Gold Coast. And
you still on your knees?
Pardon me?
Are you still on your knees?
Can you clarify?
On the board.
Oh, yeah.
To get up on
No,
those
mate. I'm popping up like I'm Kelly Slater, mate. It's easy.
Okay.
The Australians have made this thing look hard for way too long. I'm shredding, man. Yeah, so Bogues is doing, I think, what we're all doing, which is enjoying the hell out of a real offseason for the first time in a long time. You know, his involvement and my involvement with the Boomers has meant that this is a rarity for us. And just I was texting with a few of the other Boomers guys this week about, is this what this is like? Is this what normal players do? Is they just have an off season where they chill for a few months? It's a little different. So Bogues and I stay in good touch, and like I said with Sean and Craig, you know, the belief that the coach is some sort of puppet master and that we're gonna wave our arms and do all this hocus pocus and create something special, like that's a belief I think for a day gone by. And what we have is, I think, a unique relationship where I have him to thank for being here, largely my family. So any chance I get to be his teammate, I'll covet, but those decisions will be made on a stand-up board somewhere south of Brisbane, which I reckon probably has a better chance of making them a good ones.
But, well, just to follow up though, like his status, it has a bit of a flow-on effect for you guys, right? I mean, for you and Chris, as you try to put their plans together to put this roster together, you think about, are we re-signing Daniel Kickett, or what are we doing at the 5 spot? Are you just planning ahead and going, let's just assume he's not going to play, and then if he does come back to us, well, that's a bonus? Or are you got plan A, plan B, plan C in place?
Yeah, it's more the former. We're proceeding as if he's not going to play. That's his communication to us, which again just reflects, I think, so positively about him and gives you an indication about the collaborative kind of approach that we're lucky that our players have given us in their trust and their willingness to be forthright about what they're trying to do with their careers. And so our plan is that Bogues is, it's unlikely to join us. We suspect we won't see him. I think he said December, the new year is really when he'd really take a new look at this. So until we have any kind of start date for the season, I don't think it makes sense for us to plan around him. On the flip side, it's nice to have a wide range of talented players that like the idea of playing for you if the stars align. So we're grateful that he's a big one.
What about Didi, right? I think Didi's coming back. If he comes back, he's clearly classified as an import. No?
2-year next start.
Oh, 2-year next start. So that means might be an opportunity for Showtime to connect. Showtime is first team all NBL. One of my favorites this season, Jayshawn Tate. Have you been in touch with Tate?
Every other day. Yeah, we stay in great touch. JT's the best, he's somebody that we feel like we're lucky, obviously, to have him get excited about coming from Belgium to Sydney. Haven't been here before, was away from his family the whole year, wasn't able to get his family to come out here during the season for some health reasons. And now he's back in the States chasing his dream, which is what we've tried to help him prepare for. And we think he's got a very realistic chance of being on an NBA roster next season. So we're the biggest Jayshawn fan that you might imagine anywhere. And my experience with other guys in the past, like Mitch Creek and others that have spent time in the NBL and chased that dream, give me a lot of confidence for him. But make me understand also just how perilous and how fleeting those opportunities are. And so he's in touch with our strength conditioning coach on a daily basis and in the best shape of his life. He's fitter and stronger than he ever has been. And some of the videos I've seen are crazy of him kicking ass in open runs before Corona. So I'm pumped for him, and I'll be the happiest person happier than you could probably imagine if we don't see Jay Sean play in the NBL again. But if he does, I would like to think it'd be in the purple and gold.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a scout from the Knicks, and they called me regarding Tate. How would I describe him? I was like, listen, this is a guy. He can go. Like, he could play the 3 to 4. He could shoot. You know, he's not really a 3, but he's not really – he's just a baller. Like, you could just put him on the court. He got a motor. Super athletic. They was like, what would you describe him as, like, as a player? I said, he's like Draymond Green, but better offense.
Yeah, there's things that he can do that Draymond can't do. And, you know, on the flip side, you think of like a guy like P.J. Tucker. There's things that P.J. Tucker had never dreamed of doing. And I say that as a proud Longhorn that Jay Sean can do. So when I was trying to describe him to ownership about, you know, look, this is the guy. This is the piece. This is the guy that we're going to sign. And it was a bit of the same conversation. And Luke Longley was actually the one that sort of gave me the words for it, which was, you got to think Charles Barkley. Like, you got to think that kind of dynamic, how you want it kind of guy. Okay, I'm going to give it to you.
Straight up.
Yeah, JT is one NBA general manager that was here during the year, talked about freaks for freaks. You need, like, the NBA is a freaky league. And if you're going to have any chance of holding them down even for a little bit, like, you're going to need some freaky guys on your squad. And JT's damn near the freakiest.
It was an inspired signing, and for two guys, yourself and Chris Pongras, first years in the NBL, you know, the question marks were like, well, what do these guys know about the league, the understanding of who to bring in that will work here? And those of us that have been around forever were wondering why you were signing a 6'4" power forward, but you obviously saw that it would work, and it worked spectacularly. Corey mentioned Didi before. Where are those conversations at with Griff and Trajan Langdon and the Pelicans about potentially having him back next season?
Well, they're mostly focused on his well-being. Being in Brazil, obviously, is somewhere that's suffered tremendously during this pandemic. And so most of our focus has just been on helping him acquire suitable training venues and get him the kind of support he needs to stay healthy, get stronger, and improve his game while at the same time enjoying the chance to be home and be around family. I think the variability in the United States, obviously with the NBA resuming in Orlando potentially, how that all interacts with his future with the Pelicans is anyone's guess. And I don't think that, you know, even inside their organization, you can't expect them to be making those kinds of decisions right now. So all that we're doing is focusing on he's treating him like he's ours, which we're lucky to say that, you know, he's a king. And the timing of our season obviously will interact with the timeline for having to get confirmation about whether or not the Pelicans are choosing to bring him over or whether he's going to choose to stay with us next season. But both JT and Didi, you know, there's been a saying a long time attributed to Brad Stevens, the game honors toughness. And those two guys have a toughness about them and have dealt with a lot in their lives and are as close as you can get to an import walking into, you know, someone not from this country, never having seen an NBL game before, either of those guys walking in and being what the NBL is about from the first tip. And so the continuity we might have with, you know, one or both those guys staying on is exciting, but we're lucky that it's also the case those guys have shown a proof of concept for what we're doing here in Sydney, and the fact that there's lots of guys that are interested in filling those shoes if circumstances don't allow us to bring them back.
Someone who is going to be in the league is Brian Goorjian, who is now the head coach, just announced, of the Hawks. And geographically, that has been a rivalry at different times over the last 30-odd years. And Goorjian does a really good job as well of winning games, but also being able to be a part in creating rivalries, and it's great for the league and for other teams and all the rest of it. And we would assume that at some point this Hawks-Kings rivalry might go to a new level in the next year or two.
Yeah, I thought I only had, 450 some odd game wins to catch up to, but I guess I'm going to have to – it's going to be harder to chase down if he's going to just keep on winning them. So I've obviously known Coach Goergen for a while. He's in some ways, I'm a part of his coaching tree. You know, Brett Brown obviously serving as an assistant for him, and we've done some things this offseason together. So I'm excited because it's a bellwether, I think, of a trend in terms of, you know, his situation in China and around the world basketball-wise. There's going to be a lot of people who want to come to the league and want to come to the NBL and live in Australia and play in Australia. And so circumstances, you know, pushed him to join the Hawks, which is obviously great for him. And I'm looking forward to learning from him and competing against him. But I also feel remiss to not mention the job that Matt Flynn and his staff did, and in particular, the work in the Indigenous community and the work that they've done in the NBL to really champion our obligation to become a more inclusive league and a league that thinks bigger. And, you know, it's a trend that now multiple off seasons in a row where a coach has been let go while under contract. And so where that goes and how that affects our league's ability to get the best talent here, both players and coaches, is something that I think we need to take a serious look at. And I've obviously been thinking a lot about Matt and Eric and Tyson over the last few days, as their future has really been thrown into upheaval.
Very well said. Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. Will, it's always fun to have you join us on NBL Overtime. Anything else on the side before we let him go?
Not at all. Good luck in the off season. Continue success and good luck.
Appreciate it, man. We'll all need it. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too. Will Weaver, the head coach of the Sydney Kings.
I'd like to just highlight what a great job I thought they've done with this Indigenous round. Super special for me, my first year in the country, to get a chance to feel that, and obviously being aware of it and understanding, you know, the caretakers of this, traditional caretakers of the lands that we now live in across the country, and the difference culturally here in Western Australia and New South Wales and up in Queensland. And we're lucky to have fans all over the place, and a family, the Jackson Ross family, was nice enough to come visit our training a couple of times. They have a few girls, adopted girls that are big basketball players, that they were nice enough to give me this tie. And so I just wanted to say good on the NBL, and I appreciate it. And Manupi Arts is from the Tiwi Islands is where this thing comes from, and it's all just very special for guys like us that love to make this country our home. And more exciting things to come, I think, paying respects to that side of things.
Head coach of the Sydney Kings, Will Weaver there. We're almost done. Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. Plenty of news starting to kick around. And we talked about reported signings earlier, or where we may see some people sign. But we do know the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix inked a deal with Kendall Stevens. Simon Mitchell, head coach, last week, boys, with us. He kind of hinted at it, and they made it. It would have been nice if he had been able to drop the official news with us. But about 24 hours later, they let us know. And no surprise, Liam.
No surprise. I felt like it was a no-brainer re-signing. Kid's only 25. You can still get him as a local. The loophole still exists.
There it is. There's the commission check.
And he has the potential to be the best shooter in the league. Mm-hmm. If he can rise to that Clint Steindl level where he comes out, knocks it down, but is also reliable down the other end, which Steindl has become over the course of his career, you can leave him out there for long stretches and he can light the thing up. And so that's a good re-signing.
I agree. I totally agree. He's going to come back from the surgery. He also will come back with a year of experience in the league, knowing what to expect, knowing what to bring consistently. And, I mean, to have him coming off the bench behind Gliddon, I'm pretty sure he'd be a backup too. That's a bonus. That's a plus any day.
Confidence took a slight hit when he hit that ankle injury, and he probably struggled to get back into the rotation, which Simon Mitchell touched on last week. All right, NBL Overtime, hashtag NBL Overtime, all thanks to LD Mobile. Weaver, Goergen, what a week. What a week it has been. It's going to continue to get big as we head towards free agency in NBL 21. Get involved anywhere on socials, nbl.com.au. Boys, see you next week.
Peace.